Starfield is officially out on September 6th, and if there's anything an intrepid space adventurer knows, it's that the galaxy is a dangerous place. So before you start exploring and getting that spacesuit dirty, here's 10 essential tips and tricks to keep in mind. Let's get straight to it. Tip number 1. Skills selection. While you're totally free to experiment, remember to consider your own playstyle and what kind of experience you want to have when playing Starfield. There are 5 different skills trees in the game, namely physical, social, combat, science, and tech. If you've played RPGs before, then you should have a general understanding of how this works, but if you're still relatively new to the genre, then you may need to spend a little more time thinking about the kind of build you want. Also bear in mind that there are 21 different backgrounds to choose from, such as soldier, industrialist, chef, diplomat, and gangster. Each background grants you 3 skills off the bat, so naturally it'll play an important role in how your playthrough goes. Don't worry about getting the perfect build, as you can always unlock and level up skills later, but having some idea of the kind of character you want to play as and develop should go a long way in making your Starfield experience that much more enjoyable. Personally, I'd try out backgrounds like chef and sculptor just because they sound really interesting, but maybe that's just me. Tip number 2. Scanner mastery. What does a scanner see? Clearly or darkly? Thankfully in Starfield, it's the former. Your scanner is essential to navigation, travel, resource procurement, and more. In all likelihood, it's something you're going to be using a whole lot if you want to cut down on travel time and make planet landing more worthwhile. As a general rule of thumb, you should always scan a new planet before you decide to land on it. Sometimes you may not get much data back, but the results of a scan may provide you with important information regarding the planet's atmospheric composition, or if there's any resources worth extracting or location worth investigating. And once you do land on a planet, you can still use your scanner to uncover more data about the environment, ranging from statistics detailing the animal and plant life you'll encounter to any anomalies or points of interest that might be present. This should allow you to better prepare for any threats that may be lurking and just make your survey more satisfying and profitable. Finally, the scanner can also be used to fast travel back to your ship or even around different locations in Starfield. While you're obviously free to explore to your heart's content, you may find yourself walking for long stretches, so knowing how to fast travel in general is key. In the end, your scanner is one of your most vital tools and something that will definitely make your life a whole lot easier. Tip number 3. Health is wealth. No matter what game it is, the chances of getting injured or severely beaten up are extremely high, and if you're not careful, death is an absolute certainty in Starfield. You'll soon become aware of something known as afflictions in Starfield, and in principle, there are 2 types, namely injuries and infections. Injuries are acquired from getting shot in combat or not watching your step onto a new planet, while infections are obviously biological in nature and brought on thanks to alien beasts or exposure to unworldly pathogens. For this reason, you'll need to manage your health by getting in some good rest and taking some medication, just like in the real world. There are a few ways to manage your health, and one of them is by having a much needed nap once in a while. This is pretty helpful if you don't want to expend a medpack or eat a meal, so keep it in mind if you're hurting. When you're out in the field, you may come across first aid boxes. If you see a light on, then there should be 1 or more items that you can take from the box to heal yourself and even remove an affliction. If the light is off though, it means there ain't nothing inside. In the end, being mindful of your health and trying to conserve medpacks is a good idea, and if you find yourself in a really bad situation, you can always visit a doctor for some professional treatment. Whatever the case, just be sure to take good care of yourself out there, friends. Tip number 4. Mind the authorities. Being a citizen of the settled systems, you're sure to run across the long arm of the law from time to time. If you're a model citizen, there shouldn't be any problem. But if you're intent on being a right bastard, then try not to get caught in the act of killing someone, stealing stuff, or being a menace to society, since this will likely lead to your apprehension and subsequent imprisonment. Similarly, if you're carrying any restricted items or even have them stowed in your cargo hold, you could find yourself placed under arrest. If you want to carry contraband, you may want to employ a scan jammer and even have some shielded cargo space in your hold. Otherwise, just try keeping your criminal activities on the down low, you rapscallion. The reason you don't want to get arrested is because you'll end up losing a lot of XP, so in some cases, it's advisable to pay a fine to get the law off your back. And if you're not up for that, you can always go toe-to-toe with the police and take them out where they stand. Just make sure you're prepared for a fight and that you may very well end up dead if your little gamble ends up going south. Each approach has its own set of consequences, so choose wisely and you may just live to see another day, even if it does cost you in the short term. Tip number 5. Manage your inventory. No matter what the game, inventory management is crucial, and it's no different in Starfield. You'll find that you end up picking up and holding on to a bunch of stuff in Starfield, so you certainly don't want or even need to carry it all with you. Thankfully, every ship has a cargo hold where you can store stuff for later use, be it to use in combat or otherwise. While you can't really become over-encumbered, you'll find that when you start running while lugging around a lot of gear, you'll consume your oxygen much more rapidly. This is why you'll want to be selective about what you take with you, so make sure you carry a few essential items and even leave some additional space so you can pick things up. It's also possible to buy more cargo space to allow your ship to hold even more stuff, so that should prove to be very helpful down the line. Beyond this, favoriting items lets you add them to your quick slot menu, so if you want to quickly pull something out and use it, this will save you a ton of time. To this end, keep your quick slot menu in mind at all times and update it fairly regularly for the best results. Switching between guns and items rapidly in combat could spell the difference between success and failure, so the faster you develop this skill, the better. Tip number 6. More talk, less action. Fighting is great and all, but have you ever tried talking to people? Either way, whether you like action or not, this is a skill that will be of great use to you in Starfield. Being able to persuade people is really helpful, and knowing how to steer a conversation by choosing the most appropriate responses is a good idea. Don't just choose any option when conversing with others, actually take the time to think about the end result you're looking for and how to achieve it. It's also a good idea to have a chat with your crewmates when they ask to talk to you. There's always a good reason why, whether it's simply to build a relationship with you or inform you that they have something that may be useful to you in your mission. You don't have to be an expert in conversation, but having the gift of the gab is definitely a good way to avoid needless conflict and to make sure you keep the people who are important to you loyal and motivated. But yeah, when diplomacy fails, blast them. Tip number 7. Explore areas fully. Starfield is about exploration, and when I say exploration, I mean more than 1,000 planets worth of exploration. There's a whole lot to see here, as well as a whole lot of nothing. When navigating facilities or walking through cities, try to cover as much ground as possible and see what points of interest there may be, or if there are any items or resources available for purchase or, appropriation. Look for med packs and anything that can boost your fortitude and pain tolerance, and if you come across any safes, in almost all cases, you'll find some very cool loot contained within them. Just make sure the owners of the items or the authorities aren't in earshot before attempting to unlock a safe. Just saying. Exploration also allows you to uncover resources, meet new characters, and even get the chance to embark on side quests that could earn you some big rewards. The more thorough you are with exploration, the more rewarding it tends to be. That said, don't end up walking around in vast tracts of nothingness in the hopes of finding something. When necessary, make use of fast travel and make sure you're having fun. I'm all for checking every nook and cranny, but make sure you know where the line is, lest you go mad or end up dying of CO2 poisoning as a result. Tip number 8. Combat efficiency. Conserving ammunition and having a good selection of weapons is generally a good starting point with combat, but overall, you'll want to know what weapon or weapons to use to get the job done as best as possible. Certain enemies and creatures are more susceptible to certain weapons, so knowing what to use on them will make taking them down much easier. And of course, look for combustible items such as explosive barrels in the environment, as well as boost packs on the backs of opponents, as these will save you a lot of time and effort and generally make clearing a room far less taxing. Also bear in mind that a given ammo type may be used by several different weapons, so make sure you have a variety of different armaments that use various types of ammo to compensate for this. Moreover, if you end up encountering more than one kind of enemy on a planet, being able to pick a more appropriate weapon to dispatch them is a major plus. It's also a good idea to save heavier weapons and mines for more intense firefights and bosses. In other words, don't bring a nuke to a gunfight. Use only the necessary amount of force to deal with enemies, since this will save you a lot of time and energy in the long run. Tip number 9. Asteroid Mining. This isn't something that's explicitly mentioned in Starfield, but you can actually blast asteroids you encounter while in space and extract resources from them if you get close enough. In most cases, you'll probably end up with iron, which is particularly useful in weapon crafting, but also a necessary component when creating things such as adaptive frames and austenitic manifolds. You don't have to spend all day blasting asteroids like you're 8 years old and have unlimited credit at an arcade in the 80s, but it's still a pretty worthwhile activity that's oddly satisfying in its own right. I mean, they did make a whole game that centers around shooting asteroids back in 1979, so there must be something to it, right? In any case, finding additional ways to harvest resources and make some much needed cash or craft valuable items is never a bad idea. So if you need an activity to fall back on if you just want to take out your frustrations on the universe, then asteroid mining is probably it. And finally, tip number 10, level up. Taking on challenges in Starfield requires a certain level of grit and experience, and as you progress, you'll end up facing even more intimidating opponents and difficult situations. To this end, while you're free to play main story missions, it may not be a bad idea to sprinkle in a couple of side quests to keep things interesting and allow yourself to level up so that you don't get absolutely flattened by a boss or group of bad guys. Obviously, you should play Starfield your own way, but if you don't want to suffer needlessly or aren't a total masochist, then taking the time to explore and embark on a few less critical missions may not be a bad idea. And who knows, you may just end up getting access to items and weapons that will make all the difference once you reach the end of the game's main story, at least as it stands right now. Starfield is a seriously big game with a lot to do, so you don't really have any excuses to get bored. In the end, you should aim to have fun and play the game as you see fit, but hopefully these tips and tricks will make the whole affair that much less stressful and innovating. Starfield releases on September 6th, 2023 and will be available on Xbox and PC. So that's it folks, that's 10 tips and tricks to help you out before you start playing Starfield. What did you think of this list? And are there any other tips you have for your fellow adventurers? Let us know in the comments. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for daily gaming, VR and tech content. From me and the crew here at Metasquad, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Later!